Hi, I'm Tony Russo, and this is Funeral Service Insider from Kates-Boylston. Each episode features conversations about emerging trends and news that affect the death care industry. We talk to people who understand the delicate balance of change in a profession and vocation steeped in tradition. This week, I'm speaking with co-founder of Green Farewells, Alexis McCurdy. Neither Alexis nor her husband and partner Martin were in the funeral service before they started their direct aquamation business. But as with so many people that I've spoken to who start up tech-forward funeral companies, they experienced a loss and were surprised that all of the things that they knew from their world in tech weren't being applied to funeral service. So they decided to fill what they saw as a gap, and they are not alone. They're part of a rising trend. She's really smart and really entertaining, and I think you're going to get a huge kick out of the show. So please enjoy it. And also, when you enjoy it, make sure you stay on after for the postmortem. This week, we will be talking about the latest hit piece in the Wall Street Journal. But for now, here's Alexis McCurdy. So you came to our attention because you had opened a direct aquamation facility, which I had been interested in, but more interesting to me was the fact that you were tech people that were getting into the funeral business. So Can you tell me about your journey, like how you decided you needed to get into funeral service?
Yeah. So my husband and I by trade, we both come from different realms of technology. So myself in particular, my background is actually in digital product management. And so I'd been doing the same kind of work in a variety of different industries for the better part of, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And so the crux kind of my background is to really understand human behavior. And then in that human behavior, what kind of decisions are they making and how does that translate to the digital products that they buy or the digital products that they pass on, right? And when you think about
Mm-hmm.
that, that's really, really powerful. I was working in finance, doing product management and finance for a while when robo investing happened, right? And so you remember
Mm-hmm.
you'd have to go into the office and meet with your advisor, and now you can do that from your phone. Well, what does that mean? Right? Like how does that change things? How I kind of found my way into the funeral industry, I was actually working for Nike at the time. My husband and I were actually both working for Nike at the time. And I was doing digital product management there. And we had just experienced kind of just an insurmountable amount of loss in one year. So we had a ton of loss. My mother-in-law passed, my aunt passed. And it just so happened that we found ourselves as millennials actually coordinating the arrangements for the first time, right?
Right.
We'd been to funerals, but this was the first time that I think I was in the seat of coordinating affairs. And I got to be honest with you, Tony, I was shocked, I think, by this expectation that I had as a person who worked in digital products and was accustomed to doing things from my phone and knowing at the tip of my fingertips where anything was, what a disconnect that was.
Mm.
And that there was a really unique opportunity to understand someone's behavior, human behavior at potentially a millennial level who are new voices coming to be making arrangements for the first time. And wow, what a large disconnect between the experience I'm accustomed to when I order my pizza um, to where is my loved one. So
I'm sorry, if I can just quick interrupt you. Where were you living at the time? Were you living there in Las Vegas
I
or were
was
you
in
elsewhere?
Arizona. Yeah. So we were in Arizona. At the time we were remote workers. We lived in Arizona. And so we kind of found ourselves with this really fascinating space of, hey, did they ask you for your social security number via email? Right? Like who does that? You can't do that. Who does that?
Right.
Or where, like, I couldn't quite track. What do you mean my aunt was in this place? I thought she was here first. So really what we call that in digital product management is friction, right? Like there's actually a
Mm.
term for that called friction in that tech experience where you've got somebody in this journey and there's a disconnect between what they're trying to get and where you're trying to get them to go. And so we had experienced such large amount of friction that we're like, hey, I wonder if we take what we know about how you do this for your Jordans, right? Being candid,
Right.
and apply that to something so large and so universal as navigating loss, right? Have we thought about in this industry? I'm sure there's amazing million people who have, but that wasn't my experience, right?
Right.
Of like, is somebody working backwards from my friction to potentially close these gaps and make my grieving process even easier? So that's kind of how we fell into it, was in our own journeys, but really kind of working backwards of like, there's a term for this, and it's something we do every day. And I wonder if we applied what we're doing in this to some other universal space and what an impact we could make there.
And it constantly amazes me that it doesn't happen more often because, you know, to be a little facetious about it, I so expect that I'm being spied upon by my by my technology that when
You
it
are.
doesn't know what I want, it's irritating.
Yeah.
I'm like, Apple, aren't you paying attention? I always do this.
Order it for me. Well, they are paying
Right.
attention. They definitely are. They're definitely recording.
Yes, well, that's the thing. They're not. I don't mind being spied on, but also don't give me friction. Then that's the
Yes.
price that one would
Yes.
hope to get is a
Exactly.
lack of friction. And
Hmm.
so rather than so starting from figuring out the journey, how did you decide where you wanted to get involved in funeral service?
Yeah, we knew. So we kind of explored a few spaces, and we are. I'm an environmentalist by nature. I just genuinely have concern for my footprint and then leaving a legacy. It's just something that's personally motivating for us. But you will also see, again, kind of stepping back into other industries, when you work in the textile and apparel business, well, you would know that, we've got too many clothes and it's an
Right.
environmental crisis. And so sustainability is actually a very large part of these apparel makers, and how do you reclaim and reuse and recycle, right? Because that fast fashion is a crisis. And so we knew we wanted to bridge into, well, we know funeral service can be very heavy in resources, very resource intensive on the earth. What else exists? So we knew that cremation at that moment was kind of the eco-friendly space. That's kind of how we started to explore there. And in we in looking into cremation, and then actually what is the environmental impact of cremation, we stumbled on that fun fact of each cremation is 550 pounds of carbon into the atmosphere. We're like, oh boy, that's not good. So what else is there? So really just continuing to explore and unpack the tech first, right? The process. What is the process? Because human behavior is the second layer we're going to put on it. What is the process that is personally motivating for us that I can get behind and feel good about? So we stumbled. I've used stumbled 15 times, but that
That's
is
fine.
literally what it was. We worked our way into alkaline hydrolysis because we were very keen on the fact of there are other options out there that we believe this is an emerging trend that is also going to coincide with the emergence of the millennials helping be a part of the arrangements process, right?
Hmm.
And also match with our personal values on being eco-friendly, treading lightly on the environment. So we said, man, it's kind of a slam dunk there. Here we are with cutting edge, if you will. I mean, alkaline hydrolysis has
Right.
been around for a while, but cutting edge to most where people don't know it exists outside of the funeral industry. And we may have an opportunity to entice an entire market of who may were thinking about cremation in general, but here's another flavor to it. And we know we all like flavors.
Right.
So it felt like the right product market fit, for where we think we could get really good messaging behind it, coupled with who we think would receive that message really well. And so far it's been really well received by the market we were intending to go after.
Excellent. And how did you end up in Phoenix? How did you end up in Las
Ah,
Vegas?
it was kind of a magic, kind of magic of sorts. So we intended to open up in Phoenix. That was our original market. And right when we were about to purchase our equipment, the funeral board in Arizona started to be consumed by the Board of Health. And so it put all of our applications on hold because the state of Arizona was waiting to figure out, well, exactly what does this mean now that the board is getting consumed. And so they kind of put a halt on alkaline hydrolysis altogether. So our application actually got stopped. Everything kind of stopped there. Now
I
we
remember I covered that at the time, and there
Yes,
was
yes,
the amount of confusion was mind-boggling from someone from the outside calling, trying to get an answer about what was going to change. They're like, "Well, we're not sure. Well, we
yes,
don't know."
that,
And there was just a lot of indecision.
yes.
It was like they decided to do it, but they didn't plan how to do it.
Exactly, exactly. We were caught in that. Now the state
Wow.
of Arizona, they are phenomenal people. The board was phenomenal folks, and I believe they're still very heavily involved, but now in a different way. But that didn't make sense for us, right? We were really
Right.
looking for, okay, stability in the decision making there and the decision space there because we knew we were going to be coming with something different. So we started to explore, and then our neighboring state, obviously of Nevada, where alkaline hydrolysis was already legalized. And so we said, okay, well, there's a little bit less of an uphill battle. It already
Mm.
exists. There's been a lot of thinking there already. So we brought it here to Las Vegas. Now, fun fact, when we came to Las Vegas, we were super excited because we're like, oh, we're second to market. There's one already here. And then we learned that the jurisdiction where we are, there's city of Las Vegas and then there's Clark County. So when we opened, we're technically city of Las Vegas. And they're like, what is alkaline hydrolysis? What are you talking about? That's a different county. We don't know it. What is that? So we had to start
Wow.
over with the city, but we didn't have to start over with the board. And they were very favorable to us. There was just a lot of
That's
really
good.
great people here. But it was a happy accident. It was a happy accident. Nevada has the highest rate of cremation in the country, or it did as of last year. I think we're still trending that way. So even
Mm.
more of an environmental crisis. So we ended up where we needed to be, but it definitely was Arizona kind of going to halt there is how we pivoted.
Well, and I know that they're also very interested in what happens to the water out there in
Mm-hmm.
Las Vegas. So
Mm-hmm.
how did that work out for you?
Also very favorable. So since we were technically in a different jurisdiction, even though we're in the same city where the exact same machine has been here for a year prior, active, Las Vegas is like, what you talking about, Willis? So we had to pretty much start over, but how it benefited us is we actually worked in partnership with the city. So Clark County Water Reclamation District working really in favor with our actual manufacturer, BioResponse. They actually chose to reclaim the water. So I know that sometimes puts people off or they feel different ways about it. But City of Las Vegas chose, once they looked at our water profile, because we could have done two things. We could have tanked it, right? And we had that conversation. Would you prefer us to tank it and do land application? But they actually were more in favor of reclaiming it because of the science
Mm.
behind alkaline hydrolysis, right? It starts 95 and 5, and then at the end it's 96 and 4 amino acids and peptides and sugars and salts, right? Like they evaluated
Right.
that. So it was actually their preference and they felt more comfortable reclaiming it. And Southern Nevada has pretty awesome concentrated efforts at their water reclamation district anyway. They've got anaerobic digesters. They're just a part of a greater movement around organics and water. So I'd say they're just very forward thinking in that way. So it worked out for us. They actually chose to reclaim it because they felt like it was better for the city, which we agree with.
Right.
And
Yes.
we're in a desert, so it's not probably the best idea, but it was definitely a beautiful partnership.
Greg Grabowski of Hospice Advisors will be among the experts presenting at the annual Kates-Boylston Funeral Service Business Plan Conference, June 4th and 5th at the Crowne Plaza Hotel in Warwick, Rhode Island. Greg will be sharing his insights on how to best connect with hospice workers. Here's a sneak preview.
Hospice is a passion. It's a calling. People have had past experiences in end of life, both really positive and negative. They've seen end of life as a medical professional within a hospital setting, within a nursing home, within assisted living, and sometimes want to do things differently, more meaningful, work more with the family related to the celebration of life, helping families get past anticipatory grief. So when you talk to a hospice professional, most of them will start why they do what they do as opposed to what. When you talk to a nurse, they'll say, I've seen great hospice care and I've always been wanting to be part of it since I helped take care of my dad and it was super meaningful and I was able to say goodbye. And so there's a lot of real passion on the hospice side. And, one of the things is for funeral directors to not start with what, but listen to what the hospice people have to say, and then for the funeral directors to develop their own why.
I've done a bunch of these short interviews and we're putting them up on social if you follow us on social media. Whether or not you do, though, I'd like to invite you to come visit us in Warwick. If you would like to sign up, just go to the show notes, click on the link, and when you register, enter FSI Podcast to get a $149 registration. That is $50 off the current early bird pricing. All right, let's get back into the show. We're talking about alkaline hydrolysis, but that's not really why I was talking to you. The reason I was interested is because what you did with the bringing technology in and making it such a centralized part of your business.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, for all the funeral directors out there, you did have to hire a funeral director because you didn't go to mortuary school.
Correct. So we brought in our managing funeral director. She's been in the game 10, 15 years and she's excellent. And so we brought her over to run our business and kind of be that third think space for us, because sometimes my husband and I, we're like way in the future. We had a metaverse. We still do. We technically have like a cemetery in the metaverse, and our funeral director's like, huh? What? What?
Right.
So she's healthy tension for us, and I'm so glad we went that direction. So we had to have somebody anyway, but we're very, very glad to have a very experienced funeral director who's done a lot of things, because she does provide really, really good balance to us. Sometimes we're too far, and she helps us bring it back to here's a real family and what we've experienced, not just in your personas. And then how do we think through this? So she gives us a great counterbalance for sure.
Well, that's fantastic. All right. And now please, so tell me some of the technological solutions that you guys came up with to make other people's experiences the way that you would have wanted your experience to be.
Yeah. So it's actually such a good question. So I'll talk through a couple.
That's fine, please.
So the main piece we were trying to solve for when we put on our tech hat was friction. So we talked about that before. And one of the main friction pieces that we were trying to solve for, especially in the cremation space, is status. And it's such a delicate space, because if you go too far, like you don't want to be morbid, right? But like what's the right amount of information on status? Because one of the friction points we were dealing with my mother-in-law when she expired was my father-in-law having to pick up the phone and call, right? Like, where is she done?
Right.
Has she been cremated? Like, that was just a really painful experience. And we wanted to figure out, for folks that didn't want to do that, how could they not, right? Like, how could we not? So one piece that we brought in.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify for everyone, because I don't know if everyone knows that when you do direct cremation, you do have that kind of wall of silence between you and the cremation authority or whatever. It's not like with a regular funeral home where you go in and you see the body and then they say, okay, come back on Wednesday and we'll have the body laid out. It's
correct.
It's please pick up mom, and then no words until they tell you to come get the cremated remains.
Correct. So if you're not having a service or a viewing, right, you're losing that, almost like that checkpoint of sorts, right?
Yeah.
And so we were trying to figure out, okay, how do we fix that? Because that's still a really yucky experience, right? And we
Mm.
have such a transient population here in Las Vegas. That is the experience, right? The family's in Colorado, but your loved one's here in Las Vegas, right? Like that's the
Right.
experience. So what we were very intentional about was trying to, how do we build in status and transparency in the industry? Again, terrible names for it, but it's called the pizza tracker experience because it was actually through the status of a pizza, right? Like, is my pizza done? And
Right.
so we were trying to figure out how do we bring the pizza tracker, I'm using quotes, into a really tasteful, meaningful, but not too much experience. So we were very intentional on trying to find a solution, and we were looking at build versus buy. But we actually used Gather, and they do case management, and they had just released their Keep Track system at that time. And I think it was kind of catching steam, where that's exactly what they were trying to expose was in your actual case management system. And it is family and consumer facing because that's what we were looking for. You can have body tracking exists 100%, but we were looking for consumer facing. And I needed the ability to also tailor what is that message that I want to display when somebody is tracking the status of their loved one.
Mm.
So we found Gather and we worked very, very closely with their account management and their product team. And I'm sure they're sick of me. I'm like, I do what you do. Here's what I need you to help me do. But they were able to create that experience for us where if I'm a family and I'm with Green Farewells, that's the name of our business, and I'm trying to understand what is the status of my person. Well, I can see on my portal, on my phone at any time. Yes, grandma is in their care because that was a checkpoint. Yes, we identified their belongings. Yes, we verified identification. Yes, aquamation has started because sometimes they want to even know that detail.
Right.
We're very and yes, ready for delivery, has been shipped, on their way to you, and then we can follow up with, did grandma arrive? Is she home safely, etc. And so that has been phenomenal, especially for our remote families, because they're
Mm.
able to see on their own time at any time the status. And it has allowed us to get off the phone as much too, right? With like those status calls because they can see it. So we also built in, because one friction point that we have that I'm sure a lot of people have is permitting, right? Like when does the permit come?
Right.
We can't do anything until the permit is available. So we even built that in of permit received, right, into our actual status. So that way families can understand it is silent until we've gotten the permit, right? And then once we've got the permit, then they see kind of that pickup. So that was a really big one for us. That is still probably our largest differentiator right now is kind of that tracking ability. It'll even prompt
Mm.
you in that status, are you sure you want to see these things, right? Are you sure this is something you want to
Right.
see? We have some families that never look at it, and we have some that are in it daily. They are looking daily for the status update and may still send us a chat anyway, just to make sure they didn't miss it. But that's been a pretty big one. That one's been a pretty big one.
And not taking anything away from Gather, because I've seen their back end demonstrations and all, but your big part in that is making sure that you know what your families want and making those options
100%.
available because you had to ask them for stuff.
100%. What I recommend is understanding your consumer. So who is your family? And then we created personas for our families. And so we've learned just with data, and we use real data. We tailor everything based off the data. We go in with an assumption. Here's what Alexis thinks. And usually Alexis is wrong because the data is going to tell me something, right? So we use actual data to help fine tune that experience for our families. So we've created different personas, and then we understand, like I said, Vegas is very transient. So our families are from out of state, right? And so they're going to want to ship cremains. The shipping piece is important. So how might we make sure we've put in their tracking number, right? So it's easy for them. How might we let them know that it's on its way and it's out the door? How might we build in an easier way for them to pay? Can we build some of these prompts into their workflow themselves? And all of those things are based off of, if I'm this particular family and I'm engaging with your business, what would reduce that friction for me? So we wear those hats and we pretend we are those people. We give them names. I have one that I call Kendra a lot. Our Kendra, I know an actual Kendra, so I hope she doesn't listen to this and get mad at me. But I call it my Kendra because my Kendra, she doesn't want any disruption for her kids, right? Things need to be discreet. And I don't want to upset my kid because grandma is sick, right? So we needed to build into our technology ways that we will not call her because she doesn't want to talk to us, right? She doesn't want to actually pick up the phone. So how do we make sure chat is available and ready? How do we make sure that chat's going to ping me and my funeral director when we're covering each other? Because Kendra doesn't want to call us when grandma expires. She wants to chat us, right? And so those types of things is actually what leads to our technical experience, is who is our person? How do they want to engage with us? And then building the tech around that to support whatever journey they're on. And so we've got a few different personas and we fine tune it all the time. But the more we learn about our family, the more we tweak how we need to serve them, and then how our tech needs to evolve to wrap their arms around them to make it as frictionless as possible, depending on what they want from us at that time. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but the tech is flexible to achieve that.
And another thing that maybe some funeral directors may not have had this experience, because I'm a chatty Kathy. It never occurs to me that people don't want to talk, but there is a whole demographic out there that does not. I mean, and my daughters are in it.
Yes.
that wants to be texted unless there's no other way around it. Like telephones are for emergencies. Everything else can be done on text.
100%. And that is powerful, because as you have these new folks coming to the arrangement table, that is a very large disconnect, right? And so if your answer is give us a call, or if we measure our success in just how many calls we're having, you're going to miss out. So we make sure our chat is available. And I get a ton of chats, probably more than I, right? Because it's also anonymous, and people, when they're shopping, right? I'm able to engage with you in a chat and feel you out before I have to commit to a call. So when they're on the website and they're coming to our website, our chat's going to pop up, and we have all those things tracked with cookies and all of those pieces, so we can know, how many times they're coming back, et cetera. But you're able to engage with me. We call it NetiBot. You're able to engage with us in an anonymous, low friction way where you can ask a question. What is alkaline hydrolysis? Something, without having to pick up the phone and call. And so we made sure, even in our intake, I asked that specific question: how do you want us to communicate with you? And I give them the option: email, text, phone call, and let them choose. And you would be surprised how many people absolutely cross out phone call. Don't call me. I want an email or a text message is preferred.
And along with that, one of the criticisms would be that there's somehow less personal service, but you don't get a lot of people who say, well, I got bad service because there was nobody to talk to.
That is a great question. I feel like it's the opposite, because I have there's only 3 of us right now, right? So I have my funeral director. I hope I'm not overstepping on her too. She has so much more time, right? Because I have been able to take off those extra ones and twos where people just have a quick question or they want to engage with the bot, etc. So she can really deeply engage and serve with the people who want to really deeply engage and be served, right? So that level of
Mm-hmm.
concierge type service is available to her because I've got the tech to take off kind of some of those onesie twosie flybys, and it's all important. It's all very important. But if you're a person that just wants to upload from the phone, don't call me, kind of like I am. But you need
Mm.
another person I want to come in, right? And we're able to serve both ends because we've freed her up to provide that type of concierge service. So if you think about omni-channel, what we do is we try to provide an omni-channel experience. So that way you can engage with us 5, 6, 7 times before you even commit to alkaline hydrolysis, because that's different. That's hard enough in itself, right? So you want to make sure
Right.
you've qualified us, you like what we got, you chatted me a little bit. We have a price calculator on our website. So maybe you went in and put in a bunch of inputs just to kind of see what your quote is. So you've already qualified us by the time you've made a decision on something different like aquamation. You've already vetted us in a bunch of different ways. And it didn't have to be picking up the phone unless you wanted to.
Excellent. And we are kind of up against it now, so I don't want to keep you longer than I said, but I do want to give you a chance to say what you need to. Is there something I should have asked that I didn't, or is there something you didn't get the chance to say and you thought you were going to?
Ooh. No, I think the most important thing that I can leave anyone with that's taking interest in, how do you bring in tech into different industries? I think the most important thing you can do is really understand your consumer. And then not just one persona, understand them in a variety of different ways. How have you thought about these different personas and how are they different? And the most important thing is, how are they different from you? That is probably the most eye-opening thing for me, is even though we designed our process around our own archetypes of what we were thinking and what we were expecting, we're like, boy, most people aren't even like us. Go figure. There's a lot of people that are not like us. And so how do you find someone different to offer that counterbalance, right? And have them go and
Hmm.
tease out their friction and somebody else's friction and somebody else's friction. So that way you can really look at people as people and then start to create your experience to wrap your arms around a variety of different people so they don't feel like they're in a box. I think that's really powerful. It makes me sleep really well at night, knowing I spent my time thinking about people and how to make their lives slightly less complicated. But
Right.
it is a journey, and I definitely ask people to feel empowered and talking to somebody different and asking them to poke holes in your process. It is amazing what it will do for you and also potentially for your business.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all that with us. And I'm sure we'll talk to you
Of
again
course,
soon.
thanks for having me.
Funeral Service Insider is a Kates-Boylston production. It was written and edited by me, Tony Russo. Please follow us wherever you're listening to this podcast now, and if you like it, tell someone else you like it too, so maybe they'll listen as well. You can follow the link in the show notes back to Kates-Boylston.com, where you'll get all the information, including other stories about aquamation, other stories about tech. I write about this stuff all the time. We'll also have a link in the show notes to the Kates-Boylston Funeral Service Business Plan Conference coming up on June 4th and 5th in Warwick, Rhode Island. And as I mentioned earlier, you can use the code FSI Podcast. That is all one word for an additional 50% off. That makes your ticket for the 2-day conference $149. It's a fantastic deal. We always have so much fun at these things. And as I said, I've already spoken with a lot of the speakers that do preview stories, and there's going to be lots of great stuff there. You don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss it. So hopefully we will see you there. And now for the postmortem. One of the other things that you can check out in the show notes is a link to the Wall Street Journal article Actually, it's a link to the transcript of a podcast, and you can listen to the podcast if you want. The podcast is 11 minutes long, but 4 minutes of those are ads. As a reporter, it's hard to throw other journalists under the bus, but unlike other professions, that's one of the things that we're supposed to do, so we do it. For those of you completely unfamiliar, the Wall Street Journal did a podcast saying that while it kind of makes a little bit of sense, maybe, to buy your plot in advance, that pre-need is something that people shouldn't buy. Actually, they didn't say that people shouldn't buy pre-need. They said that funeral directors shouldn't swoop in and take advantage of grieving widows the way they always seem to do. And that was the part that was the toughest to read. I mean, a lot of the story isn't very fair. There's no attempt at being fair, and it makes me wonder what the problem is at the Wall Street Journal. Like, do they have family in Colorado? There's someone there that is mad at funeral service. This is not service reporting. This isn't public service. This is a series of hit pieces that seem to be coming out of nowhere. I'm already working on a story talking to some of the pre-need professionals that I know about reasonable responses to the accusations in it. But I would recommend taking a look at the story or taking a listen to the podcast, and at least knowing that you may be sitting across from a family member who has read this and has these suspicions. And they're probably people who didn't have suspicions before. That said, I don't know why the Wall Street Journal is so angry, and I'm a little embarrassed for them that they're behaving in this way. So if you have served recently someone who is related to someone who works at the Wall Street Journal, follow up with them, because you did something that really made them mad. That will do it for this week. Make sure you check in next time on Funeral Service Insider, the podcast.